It's the boy Blackbeard, man. I'm back real quick. What's happening? What's going on? Some more Midnight Mirage classics. And of course, I was just doing some nightly reading. You know, I'm always doing some reading. And I'm tonight reading in the Gnostic Bible. You know, I've talked about this before, the Gnostic Bible, okay? Of course, we know about the Gnostic Bible, which was, you know, dug up and put into the Nag Hammadi library, okay? So basically, it's giving you some of the old Coptic and old Hebrew writings that were basically removed from the Old Testament. And some of it was dug up in the early 20th century and the Far East, okay? So you can find the missing links and the missing stories in the Bible in what's known as the Gnostic Bible. So sometimes we've heard of the, you know, school of thought known as Gnosticism, but Gnosticism really is just the occult version of Christianity, or the occult version of Judaism. You know what I'm saying? So Gnosticism basically goes with Orthodox Christianity. It goes with Judeo-Christianity. It goes with what was I about to say? Orthodox Judaism. It's tied into the same Kabbalistic system ultimately. So, you know, Gnosticism, if some of you all have come across that and, you know, probably didn't know what that was, that's what it is. And if you look into Gnosticism, you will get the missing stories of so-called Jesus. And we're going to read one of them right now because I want to basically talk about a few things that are very, very important to anybody that has, you know, come into any type of enlightenment within themselves. Because when we on this journey of knowledge and this journey of knowing things, it has to be a certain level of balance, you know, because some of this information can, you know, make you feel probably a little negative, because most of what you're going to learn, you know, some of it's going to be good, but to keep it 100, most of it is going to, you know, basically be the truth, and you figuring out that you were lied to, or you were deceived, or you were misled. And being that we all have, you know, grown up in a corporate society, you know, which is the United States, you know, majority of what we have experienced has been a lie. So that means that when we do our quest for, you know, the gnosis, what we're going to find out is that majority of what we thought we knew was a lie. So, you know, you got to be balanced and not let the anger from this gnosis get you, because, you know, something that Yeshua even talks about is he talks about these different fruits. And, you know, in Gnosticism, there is something known as the bitter fruits of Samael, or the bitter fruits of Mars, okay? Now, the bitter fruits of Mars are basically just known as these bitter truths. And you know how you ever heard that term, you know, the bitter truth, or basically known as a bitter beverage as well, or a very, very strong beverage, because the fifth sphere of Mars, you know what I'm saying, is associated with basically Samael, who you all know of as Satan. But he's also known for bringing people bitter beverages. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you'll see pictures of so-called Satan, and he's bringing people these real bitter beverages, and you'll see them drinking it and looking like they throwing it up or something like that. That is an occult symbol of basically you learning something that you did not necessarily want to know, or something that is the truth, but you feel like you want to reject it because it makes you feel emotional or something like that. So basically it is like you finding out something that, yeah, it's true, but it doesn't necessarily make you feel good. So you will hear Yeshua and Satan, you know, reference the bitter beverage a lot. And that is something that you experience, you know, in your awakening. So anytime you've learned something and you were upset about it, that you just drunk a bitter beverage. That's like if, you know, a person's in a relationship and they just found out that their so-called spouse was cheating on them. You know, they just drunk a bitter beverage of Yeshua or Satan. They just came across something that is true, but it doesn't really necessarily feel good, you know. So it's like drinking, let's say, you know, like when I was growing up, my mother always had some type of homemade remedy or some type of herbal, you know, extract, or some type of, you know what I'm saying? Like she always just had some type of Isis, earth, goddamn, you know, remedy or potion or some shit, you know what I'm saying? When me and my brother, you know, would get sick or something like that. So she would always make us, you know, drink this stuff, and it will be very, very cleansing and very, very healing and very, very rejuvenating. But one thing I can always say is that none of that stuff ever tasted good, you know. So that's how it is. It's like sometimes in order for you to get something to heal you, it may not necessarily taste good, but you do need it. So briefly, I'm going to read into the Gospel of Thomas, which is coming out the Gnostic Bible. And real briefly, we're going to read through this because I think somebody can probably use it. I don't know who, but I'm just kind of inclined to put this out there. And we can kind of just talk about what it says real quick. So the first thing it says is the Gospel of Thomas. These are the hidden sayings that the living Yeshua spoke. Now, when we talk about the living Yeshua, we're not talking about the personality of Jesus the Christ, because what the Gnostic extra education of the Old Testament is going to give you is that there is a difference between the living Yeshua and Jesus the personality, So Yeshua, or the Christ, is actually a spiritual cosmic force or a spiritual cosmic energy. It is a life-giving cosmic energy. And this energy can incarnate into man or woman. Okay, so the personality, let's say, may be so-called Jesus, but the Christ energy is universal. So you could have Jesus the Christ. You could have, let's say, Mary the Christ. You could have Sam the Christ. You could have Betty the Christ. You could have, let's say, Louis the Christ. You could have Tom the Christ. You know what I'm saying? You could have, for one more, Marvin the Christ. So notice how the personalities were different, but the Christ energy had incarnated into all these people and descended into the higher mind of all these people. So when we're talking about the living Yeshua, we're talking about the universal cosmic Christ, not necessarily the personality, okay? So the first thing I want to read, it says, and he said, whoever discovers what these sayings mean will not taste death. Yeshua said, seek and do not stop seeking until you find. When you find, you will be troubled. When you are troubled, you will marvel and rule over all. So let's repeat this. So first it says, whoever discovers what these sayings mean will not taste death. This is talking about and referring to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because understanding and quote unquote knowing what something means that you already tasted death. Because in the Hebrew, knowing is also associated with the word da'ath. And da'ath has been anglicized into the English word that we know of as death. So death and knowing actually are synonyms, believe it or not. Death and knowing, the phenomenon of knowing something and the phenomenon of death actually are one and the same from a certain occult Kabbalistic point of view. So when it says that whoever discovers what these sayings means will not taste death, meaning that you will have the full knowledge of good and evil, or the full knowledge of, let's say, the cycle of life and death. So you will have removed yourself from, let's say, the automatic impulses of the animal mind and the automatic reincarnation of the physical material universe and the creator demiurge. All right. So all of you all that call yourselves so-called illuminated or awakened, most of you all have already bitten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And you've tasted a multitude of both bitter fruits and sweet fruits, because I'm pretty sure you all have learned certain things that you found out was good, such as that you were an Aboriginal American, and you had a good history here right on this American soil, and it was very, very rich and powerful. That is a sweet fruit. It tastes very, very good. But on the other hand, when let's say you learned about the Negro bed stench history, that may have been a bitter fruit that didn't taste so good. All right. So it says that, whoever discovers this will not taste death. So that means that, you will be able to know ultimately. All right. You will be able to know. The next important part is this. Seek and do not seek until you find. But when you find, you will be troubled. Now let's pause right here. So that means it's almost like going down the rabbit hole. The more you know, the more you're going to want to know, because you're going to realize that it's a lot more that I'm not necessarily cognizant of. Because when it comes to a lot of this information, most of us are aware of it on a subconscious level, but we got to just kind of put ourselves in the right environment and activate certain things. And then this knowledge inside of us will awaken, because that Christ energy is already within. So some of you all may have heard a Blackbeard tape and, may have been familiar with what I was saying. But after it probably came out fully and you may have meditated and pondered already on it, it may have clicked and you like, oh man, this sounds like something else I read about X, Y, and Z. So it's just that full manifestation of you seeking, basically going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Because the rabbit hole ultimately is your own subconscious mind. And then it goes on to say that when you find, you will be troubled. This is the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like like I said, it's a lot of, like, most truth doesn't really even feel good. And it's not something that you're going to be necessarily happy about, but nevertheless, you're going to need it in order to make better decisions. Like, for example, for people who are very, very young out there, young could be, let's say, under 30 years old. I could take myself, for example. I came into a lot of this awareness at a very young age, even when I was a so-called teenager. And because I knew at a very, very early age, it was a lot of things I couldn't partake in. Because as they say, ignorance is bliss. When you don't know about all this type of information, you're not really accountable and held accountable for it. You can kind of go about life and do things the way you want to do it. But once you become aware of certain things, now you have to be accountable and actually adjust according to what it is you just learned. So it'll be almost like, eating a certain type of food that may have tasted good, but then you may have found out something about it that wasn't necessarily cool. So now, you have to basically adjust according to the new information that you found out. So, ignorance is bliss. I can't say that. That's why a lot of people don't really try to learn anything, because they do know that there is a real truth out there, but subconsciously they know that that truth is going to require some type of accountability. So they just choose to stay away from it, and they choose to stay ignorant. So you have a lot of people who are ignorant, but they are conscious of their ignorance. And that's a whole nother type of animal right there. Okay. Then it goes on to say, when you are troubled, you will marvel and rule over all. And I'm going to kind of wrap it up with that. It's like, when you learn this information and stuff like that, you're going to have the complete control over your own life. When you learn about who you are, you learn about your environment, you learn about your immediate history and your ancient history. You are more prepared basically to be successful in life. So that's how a lot of this spiritual information is supposed to, influence you. It's supposed to influence your decision making, your problem solving, your critical thinking, and basically improving you, as a so-called human being. That's really what the whole point of all of it is. Okay. So I just wanted to make this real quick to kind of put this out there, to let you all know that, just to keep going on your own journey and, just keep on growing and glowing. That's the whole point of this tape, to keep growing and glowing. That's what we're doing. We're just growing and glowing. That's all. And we are using the mysteries of the higher self to continue to do that. So the inner self will glow, because we all have an inner sun or a spirit inside of us, and it will glow. And as long as that spirit is glowing, then our consciousness will continue to grow. So in order to grow, you have to glow. All right. Your inner sun has to glow in order for your consciousness to grow. All right. But it's it's the boy Blackbeard, man. I ain't gonna hold y'all up on this one, but just want to make this one real quick. Y'all stay tuned. I'm out.